What's up, my healthy friends? I hope you're having a superb day and you've already got plans to put delicious, healthy, flavor filled food in your mouth. And it's something we don't talk much about in the world of dieting and disease. It's the conversation around flavor. Part of feeling satisfied is making sure your tongue is happy too, as well as all of the other stuff in your body, which is why in 2023, it's my mission to coach 500 people to stop the binge eating and savage self talk cycle so they can lose weight whilst feeling in control and without restriction along the way. And reading this mission statement out with today's guest here, I think is possibly going to set the tone for some interesting discussion. So I want you to meet Pushing the Limits podcast host and 3 times best-selling author, Lisa Tamati, who's from not too far away over in New Zealand. Lisa is a retired endurance athlete that has put over 70,000 kilometers into her legs, which is about 45,000 miles. She's competed in some of the most crazy and wild long-distance races in the world, from the Sahara Desert to Death Valley to the Himalayas. It's just the mind boggles. She's also a health renegade, as she has a story of fighting against the mainstream medical system to get her mum more holistic and natural health care after a sudden aneurysm at the age of 74. And as well, she's produced a number of adventure film documentaries, hosted her own TV show, and she's obviously just a powerhouse. And so I want to get on with this conversation. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Hey, Matty, it's awesome to be here. It's been a long time in the making, this interview.
It has. It's been a while since I was, I think I was on yours last year.
Yeah. Like, you did a fabulous interview on my show, Pushing the Limits, which was great. It's about time to have you back now. Because it was so long ago.
Yes. Well,
It's taken us that long to coordinate, but hey, here we are.
Yeah, we were just talking before we hit record, right? Like, just the busy lives of solopreneurs and trying to figure it all out and line up diaries, and can just be chaotic.
Absolutely. And you were trying to help me do systems at the beginning and then gave up because I was just like a mess. I have improved since those days, Matty. I've actually got some of my shit together. Some.
Oh, well, you're on the road. Well, I mean, if there's anyone that's got systems together, obviously you have some systems together because you have achieved some incredible stuff in your life. And so maybe we can just start by painting a picture of how Lisa, the endurance athlete, came to be.
Yeah, great place to start. So, 25 years doing crazy sort of adventure races and expeditions all around the planet. A couple of thousand Ks in the Sahara, the Arabian, Libyan, Niger, Jordan, Gobi, Death Valley, out back of Australia, right through New Zealand. The funny thing is, Matty, is I had no talent whatsoever. Asthmatic since I was a baby, in and out of hospital as a little one, very small lung capacity, hopeless VO2 max, broke my back when I was 21, was never meant to run again. So just a lot of stuff to overcome to do what I did. But I'm just very bloody minded, and I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, which was to have lots of adventures all around the world and push my own limits. For me, it wasn't about winning so much, being genetically disabled, really. Although I did end up winning a few races and national titles and stuff in the end, just because I had so much experience. But really just wanting to really experience life and live it to the full, and succeeded many times against all odds and then failed miserably in other times, and had lots of sort of adventures along the way, some pretty negative ones that I don't really wish to repeat. But all of them taught me something, and at the end of the day, that's what life's about, really, is just going hard, pushing the limits, finding out what you can and can't do, and picking yourself up when you fall over and trying to learn and do it better the next time.
It's so incredible.
That sort of start.
Yeah, it really is. It's so incredible, everything that you've achieved. And it's interesting too, and that's, as I was sort of reading the intro, that's kind of why I said reading this mission statement is going to be interesting, because, we're in such a funny chapter of human history where, pushing your limits is kind of avoided. Like, it's so easy to avoid your limits and avoid discomfort, and we're really in this, the snowflake generation is what they, often term it, right? Is that we have to so delicately walk around people's feelings and their, situations, because everybody's offended, and, nobody wants to do hard work. And I'm being general in my statements, obviously, but like, how in a world where everything is so easy and privileged and amazing, were you able to be like, you know what, I'm going to say no to the chocolate and the alcohol and the Netflix and all the things, and I'm just going to run?
Well, I don't know that I actually did say no to the alcohol and the chocolate in the beginning. It was more of a,
Mhm.
to be honest, at the start, like I love my food and I'm going to run longer so that I can eat more. When I was young and I didn't understand the correlation between performance and what you put in your body, it was just like an excuse to eat more because I burned lots and lots of calories. So I definitely learned that one along the way, that doesn't really equal success, and had to learn and adapt and change. And I'd still say that's an ongoing project, like to absolute perfection is definitely not there. But when it comes to training, when it comes to lifestyle, all the lifestyle factors of discipline and things, and in business as well, yeah, it just completely. I think growing up in the 70s was a good thing because it was, like as kids we were out all day. You came home when it got dark, and you sort of. Well, I grew up in a household where you toughened up or you sank, like I had a
Yeah.
hard ass dad who sort of didn't tolerate weakness, was quite a tough man. And I think that was great, actually. Like we had the soft, cuddly mum, but we had this dad who was a bit of a hard ass. And he was great because he would take us on lots of adventures and push us really hard.
Yeah.
And I think that really sort of set me up for being able to sort of push through boundaries because I had to cope. I mean, there was definitely downsides of that as well. Don't get me wrong, but being soft on kids and being sticking them in cotton wool, that's not the way forward. And being offended at every damn thing that you see or hear on television, or what do they call it, cancel culture or whatever, it's just bullshit. Like
Yeah.
I just want people to just like, if you don't like something, turn it off. You don't have to
Yeah.
tell everybody else not to do it. Like, I mean, there's, obviously in the extremes, but, like it's getting ridiculous to ridiculous levels now. And I think, when we need to, as humans, we evolved. We've got ancient DNA. We need to respect our circadian rhythms. We need to respect our need for movement, our need for exercise and good food and social interactions and all of these aspects. If we don't, that's when we end up with disease because we're not sort of paying attention to those very basic things like the light in the morning and not too much blue light at night and optimizing our sleep routines and just those little things that make one hell of a difference to our mental well-being. And like you see so many people struggling with depression and all sorts of stuff, and I've been there. I've definitely been there, and a lot of it's a complicated picture of everything from toxins to bad food to bad relationships to how you were brought up and all of that sort of jazz. But even if you've got all of that baggage behind you, if you can optimize the inputs that you're putting in, i.e., the
Yeah.
right food, the right light, the right circadian rhythms, the right sleep, the right exercise, you're giving yourself a better chance of being able to cope with the stresses of life, I think. I think that's a really important point where, as a health coach now, I like to start at the basics if I can, you know, rather
Yeah.
than, I love all the fancy biohacking stuff. My house is just full of biohacking. It's a wonderland, biohacking wonderland. But at the beginning, if you're not doing the basics right, it's not going to
Yeah.
work.
And it's so interesting to me how the basics are almost considered woo woo now. Like, if you're in, sort of, I think you and I, we're obviously deep in this world of wellness and holistic health and biohacking. But when you sort of, you're in a situation where you find yourself sort of back in with the mainstream crew, you're reminded like how much of a hippie you are. And that happened to me recently because I actually went back this year to be playing football, Australian rules football, after many
Wow.
years, just because, I just, needed a bit of that male competitiveness, sort of, and
Yep.
physicality in my life. And it was
Mm.
either that or boxing. And so far it's that the body's holding up. But that was kind of my reintroduction for the first time in a long time to sort of just a mainstream group of guys that sort of
Yep.
don't know anything about nutrition, health, and wellness, despite being at a sports club. And overhearing like just how much of a hippie the stuff that I have to say or share or talk about is. And the president of the club as well was, invited me to talk because he could listen to the podcast, and has been checking it out since I've been there. And so I was thinking, oh, what am I going to talk about to this group of guys without looking like just a crazy hippie that's taken mushrooms?
It's so true, mate. It's so true. Like, because we, you and I interview people, like we're all a bit of an echo chamber, really, because we all believe quite similarly and have the same sort of opinions, and we think everyone else has the same opinions. And then you talk to your mate at the cafe shop, and you're just like, actually, no, it's not the general opinion. And doing these things like that are not woo-woo. This is the thing. We can back it up with science. We can get, like you and I can go deep in the science and bloody, hammer it out with the proof and the pudding, but it comes across as woo-woo when you're talking about breath work and meditation and sleep optimization and, like they're just like, oh, that old shit again, because they've heard it before for many, many years. And so sometimes I start with start a bit backwards, start with the fancy stuff that they want to know about and then work my way back. Once they see some results, then we can go and, maybe work on some of the foundations. I'd like to do it the other way, but it doesn't always fly because you've got to meet the person where they're at, But damn right. Everything we do or we try to do, really science-backed as much as we possibly can. And then there's a lot of intuition and a lot of testing things out as well. Certainly on myself, I'm, biohacker, sticking things in me all the time and trying things out. I haven't died yet. I'm just, I am surprised sometimes that the basics are not there. Like the absolute basics are just not being taught anywhere, except, in the world that we're in. Everybody knows everything, but when you're not in that world, and well done for going back into that real macho world of rugby and, just watch your brain, please.
Yes, absolutely. I've been concussed once. It was a very long time ago, but I got to look after my head.
We'll have a conversation about that afterwards, what you can do to prevent if you're going into games, actually stuff that you can take prior to the game so that you don't get concussions. There's a couple of things
great. Like maybe you should talk at the footy club and not me.
They wouldn't listen to me. But like plasmalogens from Dr. Day and Goodenow, put that on your radar. And even things like, N-acetylcysteine and things that can just prove if you get hit during the game, you've got that on board. There's a few other things. Fatty 15 is another carbon 15 molecule that of fat that really helps protect the brain if you're hit. So if you got that on board when you get a concussion, you're much less likely to have a really bad outcome with a concussion. So
that's so interesting. That's so interesting. There's a couple of guys down there that wear helmets, and one that has had 7 concussions, and he was the neurosurgeon said that he shouldn't play, and then he was tested and basically decided that he was clear to play again, but he has to wear a helmet. And had a discussion with him about that, and he was talking about the fact that the conversation was about more his mental health, being like he gets enjoyment from playing, and that would encourage healing of the brain as well. And so it was this delicate balance, but he would benefit so much from that conversation.
Would you? Because brain health is one of my favourite things. And there's things that you can do if you want to continue to play, like doing that and making sure that that's on board. And then, things like hyperbaric. We're sitting in my hyperbaric oxygen clinic at the moment. Huge proponent of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And then combining that with other things, a high-fat diet, keto diet, low carb, all of these things are very beneficial for brain health. So there's a lot of things. If you're going to continue to play, then you want to know those strategies, because I'm getting a lot of players and boxers and things who are now 50 plus and heading down the road of dementia. And that's not where you want to be in 20 years' time when you're used up, you're no longer able to play the game, but now your future's looking pretty bleak. And that, apparently, unfortunately, is very often the case when you have had repeated concussions especially. So, come and talk to me if you've got a brain issue,
I'll definitely point in your direction. And I want to circle back to the hyperbaric thing. I actually did some hyperbaric chamber stuff recently myself, but I'm curious in the timeline of your own fitness journey and us having this conversation about, foundational health being considered woo-woo. When you were a bit younger and you were really going hard on this stuff, was it really just about grit, or was the conversation about what to eat and how to sleep and the stress in your life, was that a thing then, or has that sort of come in later in that journey?
In the first, I want to say even first 18, 20 years of my career. So, like I started sort of, what was I, 23, 24, when I started doing more extreme sports, and then a little bit later, ultra marathons. I had no idea. We just had no idea back then. We just went, take a teaspoon of concrete, harden up. If you're going to run long, run long. That's what you did for training. You just got out every day and ran for miles. I had no idea of weight training. I had no idea of flexibility training. I had no idea of nutrition. I had no idea of electrolyte balance, and subsequently got myself into trouble with electrolytes a few times and nearly died from just things like hyponatremia or rhabdomyolysis and things like that. Because this was the dark ages. I mean, I'm 54 now. Like, we're talking, 25, 30 years ago, the knowledge was just, way, 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 way back. And so we just didn't have any of that. And, we used to do things like, and I cringe now, like drink all night and then get up at 4 a.m. and go and run for 12 hours. Like absolutely mental when I think back on it, like.
That's one way to handle a hangover.
That is not what you do, like what was I thinking? It was just madness, but it was all about being a hard ass, right? You're tough and you played hard, you worked hard. Now, older, wiser, educated, much more educated, and the science has come a hell of a long way since then. And I've done a really, last 8 years deep in that, just horrified at some of the stuff that I did to my body. And now I've got to undo some of that damage. And it's one of the reasons I don't do ultras anymore, partly because I studied genetics, and I did my own genetic, assessments, and came back that I should not be doing super long ultra endurance type of exercise. I should be doing shorter, sharper, high intensity, and then combining that with Pilates, yoga, all of those calming things. So
how many years had you been running ultras before you found that out?
25. I didn't really get into this until after my career. Unfortunately, I missed that opportunity to see what I possibly could have achieved, and I retired when I was 48. So, but it's a real shame, and it's really because I got into this position because of Mum's story and her journey that she was on after an aneurysm. And I just dived into the research, and I really haven't, come out of it, and now I've learned all the stuff that I did wrong back then, and I can't go back and redo it. But now I can.
Out of curiosity,
help younger athletes,
Out of curiosity, when you say, because this is one of the things that was coming up in my mind as you were talking then, is that like, sure, we've got the genetic information, you've learned all this stuff, but you did it. You successfully did it, right? So it's like, where is the line between the science says A, B, C, but also I've got X, Y, Z result?
Yeah, I think I could have had much, much better results. Like if I was keto fat adapted athlete, and I was able to, I wasn't eating rubbish and I wasn't drinking alcohol. I mean, not that I drank much, but, on occasion we'd lose the plot and go hard. And if I'd had periodization and if I'd had strength training in the mix, I did in the last 5 years have a really good trainer who made me really strong, and that's when I got my best results, and we did change the diet up, and we did. So the last few years, at least to some degree, I had some of that knowledge in there by then. And that's when I had, the national titles and the podium places in international races and things like that, because he basically saved me from, all the mistakes that I've been making for years. So I think, we'll never know now, but I think I would have done a hell of a lot better. And I think also the performance now of the young athletes coming through, because they have this knowledge, they are performing at a much higher level than we were. Just like in the rugby world, the rugby players of 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, amazing athletes, but they didn't have all the knowledge, and they weren't professionals, and they didn't go to the gym. They went out and worked 8 hours a day and then trained, so they didn't have the perfect environment for creating the absolute machines that we see now running around on the paddocks. And that sort of makes the game a little bit more dangerous too, because you've got bigger, stronger, really faster men all coming at each other at 100 miles an hour. So there's ups and downs of that sort of thing. But I think, I would have. What I did have was mental toughness and resilience and determination. And a lot of that came from, I think, actual mental issues like trying to prove that I was tough and cool and good and, lacking self-esteem and not being very confident as a young lady and wanting to, fit in and all of those sorts of things that I think because I'd grown up with a dad that I wanted to please and who was a hard ass, an awesome dad, but really tough, sort of set me up to then date a boyfriend who was exactly the same, but a whole lot worse. And that was a very abusive relationship for a number of years in my early 20s that really shaped me in a lot of negative ways, but in the long term, really some positive ways because I survived it and came out the other end from, domestic violence and all of that sort of stuff, which took me a long time to get over. But when I did, I was really a lot stronger, a lot more confident. I knew who I was and what I was capable of. And I came from really the bottom to, not taking that shit anymore, but it took until I was well into my 30s before I sort of crawled out of that space, You'd have to read my first book for that full story, but it's pretty harrowing.
Thank you. I
Like
appreciate you. I appreciate you sharing that here with us. That's some vulnerable, real stuff. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That boyfriend left me in the middle of the Libyan desert after 5 years of relationship and in the middle of an expedition, really extreme illegal crossing of the Libyan desert, when we had 35 kilo backpacks and only 2 litres of water a day, and he decides to call it quits on day 4
oh my God.
in the middle of the desert and left me. I mean, that was good times. That was actually the lowest point, one of the lowest points in my life up until that point, at least.
Fair enough.
And a turning point, where I went, okay, this relationship's really not healthy for me, and this is not normal.
Yeah.
And then I slowly crawled myself out of the morass, and really sport is what pulled me out of the ditch, if you like, out of the darkness that I was in, the depression, suicidal, suicide attempts, all of the stuff that I went through back then. And this is long time ago now, but that took a few years, and I got into ultramarathon running after that, like the official racing stuff. I'd been with him for 5 years and traveled the world, and we'd done lots of extreme things, but I hadn't done actually racing at that time. And so when our relationship actually broke up and I was suddenly without a partner to do stuff with, and I discovered these races that you do, and I was actually reading an article one day about one called the Marathon des Sables, which is a 240k race across the Moroccan Sahara, and back then it was touted as the toughest race on earth. And I was comparing it to some of the stuff that I'd done with the boyfriend, and I was like, yeah, I reckon I can do that. It's a hell of a lot easier on paper than what I'd done. So I signed up. I'd never run a marathon. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and green as anything, and just did it and loved it, and was surrounded by positive people. And that was the biggest key factor for me, was that I was surrounded by all these people going through something tough and hard together, helping each other, pushing each other. And that environment was just gold for me, because I was just so needing that confidence and that encouragement. And then so I just got addicted to it because I did really well, and ended up just doing race after race after race, and the rest is sort of history, as they say.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it's just so great. Like, it shows the power of community and camaraderie in being able to support one another to achieve a goal. I think it's the sort of the immeasurable part of success is being surrounded by the right people and with the right mindsets.
Absolutely. Pick your tribe and pick your partner really, really well. That's what I learned. You pick the wrong partner in life, and you could be in for a hell of a long battle. And by the same token, if you get a tribe of people around you that are really positive, go forward, growth mindset, open to new things, always learning and always encouraging each other, man, you can achieve incredible things. And that's what you and I try to do with our podcasts and our communities that we run and hold and look after, is that we're trying to support each other. It's not about, we're the preachers from on high who know everything. God forbid, we don't. It's that, hey,
we're human too.
We've got some experiences here. We've fallen over a number of times. We've learned a fair amount of stuff. Maybe you want to come and learn with us and it's that two-way street, that I get a buzz out of, and I think it really helps things. And when coaching lots of young athletes along the years, when I believe in them, they believe in themselves suddenly, because I'm apparently know what I'm doing. I'm the guru in their eyes, at least. And when I say they can do it, all of a sudden they can, because you've just taken that "I can't possibly do that" thing away. And then I go, "Yes, you can, and I know how to get you there, so just trust in me and I'll take you there. You've just got to put in the hard work," and they're off to the races. And I've seen incredible things, absolutely incredible things. And the same in our health journeys, when I'm, taking and helping people in some really dire straits now. So I work with cancer patients and stroke people and people with dementia and head injuries and, all sorts of bloody horrible things that come my way, unfortunately. It is about, number one, getting their mind in the right place to hope and to fight and to not give up and to have an open mind and to not just take what your local doctor says to you as the absolute gospel and not look outside the square. Because nothing against your local doctor, but no one person is across the entire world of research now. None of us are.
Yeah.
And so there may be an answer out there that you just haven't discovered yet for your particular set of problems. And it's up to you to go and find that answer, or to find someone who can help you find that answer, and then to try different things and to not give up. And I've been on this journey with my mum. As I said at the beginning, I've written a book actually called Relentless. This is the story of my mum had a massive aneurysm, so 7.5 years ago, was left with massive brain damage. Age 74, we were told she'd never do anything again. And this is what sent me down this whole biohacking researching world that I dove into, and me just absolutely flatly refusing to accept that and fighting against the system. And man, I had to fight. Like there were medical balls ups, there were all sorts of stuff that, all in the book that's explained. And I came across the hyperbaric oxygen therapy then early on in the piece, thank goodness. And this was what the cornerstone. It's not the only thing. I had a very multi-pronged approach to her rehabilitation, everything from, really extensive physical training to the keto diet, through to supplementation, through to peptides, through to hyperbaric and, intravenous vitamin C and all sorts of things that I put into the mix. It took it 2.5 years from being like a baby, unable to speak, no idea who she was, no memory, no control over any bodily functions, to having a full driver's license, walking 3 or 4 Ks a day, and going to the gym 5 days a week and hanging out with her girlfriends, Yeah, it's a miracle story.
With full memory?
Yeah, full back. Like, to get your driver's license, you have to have full intellectual capacity. She even got her eyesight back because she lost all the peripheral vision, and even that came back, So to get a driver's license really shows that you're a competent person. She got her, power of attorney back, so her legal right to look after herself again. And that was round one, and unfortunately then 20 or 19 months ago, she was hit with brain tumours, CNS lymphoma. So I thought she was having another stroke, rushed her to the hospital. They ignored me, sent me home. I took her back in 2 days later. They ignored me, sent me home. Then I fought for 3 whole weeks. Even though I've written a book about the first round of balls ups in the medical system, they still did this to me. And then after 3 weeks, I fought and I said, I want an MRI. There is neurological damage going on. I don't know what's going on. I want an MRI. Eventually, I won the right to get an MRI. Came back, all these tumours were in her brain. Then they were like, oh, yeah, tumours, better send you to the brain surgeon. This amazing brain surgeon chopped the main tumour out that was in there, the bigger one. They did a pathology thing on it and histology on it, and it came back a very aggressive CNS lymphoma. And then we were told there's nothing we can do, and you prepare to die pretty quickly. There is nothing that is out there, and they could not have been further from the truth. So I went home and I studied the metabolic approach to cancer. I interviewed 18 different doctors from around the world. I put 15 doctors on her team, everything from integrated oncologists through to nutritionists, through to microbiome experts, et cetera, et cetera. Took us 12 weeks to get rid of the tumours, and we've been free of them ever since. And I've written a book now called What Your Oncologist Isn't Telling You, and it's the whole metabolic. We're actually in a movie called The Cancer Evolution, This is
Yep.
a movie that's coming out in September by Maggie Bradley and her husband. Maggie had terminal cancer, tumours right throughout her body, like, well, I don't know, it was something like 80 tumours or something, and she had weeks to live. And then she discovered the metabolic approach to cancer. And she did a lot of fasting, and she learned and she studied, and she's now producing this film free of cancer and doing fabulous, and now sharing that knowledge with the world through this amazing movie that's coming out. And Mum and I were lucky to be interviewed for the movie, so that's coming out in September is the world premiere of that. So if anyone who's out there who's listening who's got cancer, look up the metabolic approach to cancer or reach out to me, because I can point you in the right direction, help you to understand that there is two schools of thought. The one is the somatic theory of cancer, where it's all like genetic and, genetically driven. And the other is really that it's metabolically driven, and that you can do a lot of things like, the keto diet, low calorie, low carb diet. Sorry. There's a book called How to Starve Cancer by Jane McClellan. There's a ton of work out there. There's a course that you can do. There's all sorts of stuff that you need to know about, in other words. Anyway, to cut a long story short, Mum's now, she's about 90% back. She lost a little bit of function when, they chopped the tumours out and stuff. But she's independent to the point where she can, be off in the house and around and go for little walks and stuff. And she goes out with her girlfriends and things again. She can't drive the car at the moment. They won't let her. She wants to. We'll get back there. But, and we've got to stay one step ahead of it. With cancer, you never want to sort of rest on your laurels and go back to the old ways. You want to be always in that preventative mindset, because all of us are producing cancer cells every day. It's just that we have good enough immune systems to be dealing with them. And when things like toxins and inflammation and viruses and, any manner of things that can cause damage to the mitochondria start to get the upper hand, is when the cancer can get a foothold. So you always want to be in that preventative space, even if you haven't got cancer now, just always thinking, how can I lessen my chances of getting it? Try to help people with that as well.
Oh, it's so incredible, and I love that story. And any platform that I can give to anyone that cured cancer in a different way, I will do as much as I can, because I've, as you already know, I worked in a cancer hospital myself, and that's where I discovered the out of the box thinking, but not from inside the building. It was my just curiosity that drove me to look at other stuff, and then coming across Nasha Winters and her work, and Thomas Seyfried, and the film series The Truth About Cancer is a really good place for people to start. And it's just incredible. And I'm like you, and it's not that Western medicine or conventional treatment doesn't have its place.
No,
it's just that we're just told it's the only tool in the toolbox, which is absolutely not true.
Absolutely not true. And they don't play well with others in the sandbox, unfortunately, generally speaking. And so you have to understand that, take what you need from their information, but then go and look elsewhere as well, bring all that information and then make the decision what's right for you. Traditional stuff has its place. Absolutely, it does. But it's not the only stuff that you need to be thinking about. And then when you've gotten rid of the cancer, you want to keep on your toes, because most people's cancer comes back, So you've got to really stay one step ahead of it. And that's the tricky thing for me and Mum at the moment, is that I'm trying to tweak and adapt to protocols all the time, so I keep the cancer guessing, So it's not like you ever go, well, now we can relax and we're fine again. If you do that, that's when you're liable to get back into the wrong foods and do the wrong things. And just basics too, going back to basics again. If you can detoxify your environment, if you can do more exercise, if you can do muscle building exercises, resistance work, you're taking away food from the tumours for starters. And that's really hard to tell someone who feels like shit and sick. And fasting is also a really powerful tool, in the right place and the right time under the right guidance, I have to qualify. But and things like hyperbaric and intravenous vitamin C, and then now there are some peptides that are really exciting stuff. So don't give up. There's a ton of things out there. Unfortunately, a lot of them do cost a lot.
Mm.
We've spent a small fortune this year trying to get to the basics of things. And that's one of the reasons, like, I wrote the book. Well, it's actually an interview series with all the people like National Winters and Jane McClellan and co. Because I wanted to give it a low-cost way for people to get that information all in one place, all curated, so that they've got that there, and then they can go to town if they can't work with me one-on-one, which
Yep.
is more intensive and I can only work with a very few people at that sort of a level. So, it's just getting people access to that information and getting it out there is super important.
Yeah, I want to dig into the hyperbaric oxygen stuff because we were talking about it before we hit record that you've put a clinic on the side of your house and you were
Yeah.
showing me the pod and stuff. And so, where did that come into the journey, and where was your sort of realizations that this tool would be incredibly useful in your mum's journey?
Yeah, so hyperbaric oxygen therapy has got over 100 years of research. It's been used forever. It's comes actually from the dive industry, when the divers got the beans that they would put them in these hyperbaric chambers and bring them up slowly, and because if they came up too quickly, the gas in the blood would expand too quickly and cause damage. What they found is that if they put people on oxygen and took them down, or the equivalent of being underwater, you're not actually underwater, you're under more pressure. So our one goes to 1.5 atmospheres. Some of the medical ones in the hospitals go to 2 and above atmospheres. And what this does is it hyper oxygenates the body. So you're getting up to 10 to 12 times more oxygen uptake in the body than you would here at sea level. So at sea level, we're all saturated. If I put an SpO2 monitor on your finger, it'd be at 97, 98%. We can't really get a heck of a lot more in. When you're in a hyperbaric environment, the oxygen molecules are compressed in size. When they compress, they dissolve into the plasma of the blood, and they're no longer dependent on just being on the red blood cells. That means as these compressed molecules can get through places where there's a lot of inflammation, whether you've got hypoxic tissue, say you've got a ripped ligaments in your knee, for example, and you've got a lot of swelling around the knee, the blood flow and the oxygen isn't really getting there because it's really struggling to get it through those tiny capillaries that are now damaged, right? If you get in the hyperbaric, then the oxygen can suddenly get through there. It can also get through the blood-brain barrier to damaged tissue in the brain. And this is why it's so powerful for neurodegeneration or concussions, TBIs, all of that sort of thing, because it gets the oxygen through to that damaged ischemic penumbra. So you typically, you might have some dead tissue from a stroke or an aneurysm or whatever, and you can't rescue that. That stuff's gone. But around that is what they call the ischemic penumbra. And if you can get oxygen to that, is where it's alive, but it's just not firing properly. And if you can get enough oxygen to that, and then you combine it with a good diet, like good fats, especially like the plasmalogens that I mentioned earlier, fatty 15s, fish oils, all of those sorts of good fats, that can help repair the membranes, get them firing again, and your brain can reroute itself. So even though you have dead tissue, the brain can go and rewire itself, and you can get your function back, and you can prevent the degeneration over time. So that, and it's used, and we use it in cancer. We're not allowed to say it's a cure for cancer or anything like that. It's an adjunct therapy. Cancer does not like oxygen. It's an anaerobic metabolism. Otto Warburg was the scientist who first discovered this back in the 1920s, called it the Warburg effect, where the cancer cells basically use fermentation rather than an aerobic glycolysis process for getting their energy. And they open up a whole lot of doors on the cell to let the glucose in. That's why they can do PET scans and see where the cancer is, because these are the cells that just suck up all the glucose, basically. And so there they can see, there's a cancer cell, or there's a bunch of cancer cells there because it's sucking like no tomorrow. Now, if you surround that in oxygen, that's like, machine gunning down those cancer cells, because they don't like oxygen. And then if you combine that with intravenous vitamin C, then that can be a really good combination. And again, with a keto diet. And there's a lot of nuance to this conversation. I'm oversimplifying it for the purposes of the podcast, but go and have a look at the research in that area. It's pretty powerful. Dr. Dom D'Agostino, who was on the podcast, has done a lot of research in looking at hyperbaric and looking at the cells under hyperbaric conditions in combination with ketones, and just watching them explode, basically
Right.
down the microscope. So pretty bloody exciting stuff,
Yeah.
and certainly worth, putting into the mix of what you're doing. Surgery, traumatic sort of crush injuries, burns, diabetic wounds, ulcers, anything that's hypoxic, neuropathic sort of pain, all of that sort of stuff can be beneficial for hyperbaric heart issues. There's a few contraindications. Things like if you've got COPD or certain heart things, or if you're on chemo, you don't want to do it while you're on chemo because chemo will become stronger when you're in there. So there's a few, things that you have to watch out for, but it's generally pretty safe and very, very powerful. It releases more stem cells and attacks the inflammation pathways in the body. So anything that releases more stem cells into the bloodstream is going to mean that those tissues can rejuvenate, because stem cells can become anything that the body needs. So those stem cells will be released out of the bone marrow more. They will go to the place that needs the healing. And, Bob's your uncle, so to speak. So
Bob's your uncle.
That's an old one, isn't
it? I was going to say, powerful. Too, just for the listeners, if you want to do a deeper dive on the Otto Warburg effect, which is an actual hallmark of cancer, even in conventional cancer treatment. It's something that cancer doctors know is a hallmark of cancer, but it's just not given any attention. But there's a fantastic book that I have on the shelf behind me, actually, called Ravenous by Sam Apple, that talks in depth about the history of the research behind that and what was done in World War II to experiment on that and a few other things. But it's a really, really interesting book called Ravenous.
Okay, I have to look that one up. That's missed on my radar.
It's juicy. There's all sorts of stuff in there.
I bet.
Yeah, no, it's incredible.
Political, unfortunately, cancer is very political and very much, there's a lot of money and there's a ton of research gone in one direction, which makes it difficult to push the ship in the other direction, it's just getting the word out there to go and research this other side of the fence, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, and I think our both of our podcasts do that. They invite people to look at things differently and slowly, one person at a time, they slowly open up to a different perspective. And I think as well, one of the positives of the internet and social media is that it has given these doctors and nutritionists and all of these different people that are previously in a conventional system the opportunity to display to the world their expertise in conjunction with some of this other stuff, because I think it really gives it that mainstream credibility that's required for mass adoption of doing things differently. And the reality is that pharmaceutical companies, but any business, goes towards where the money is. And if we can guide people to spend their money in a different way that might produce also a better outcome for them, the market will listen.
Eventually, yeah. But we don't. The thing is, when you've got cancer, you haven't got the luxury of waiting for that to catch up, right? And so many doctors that I've talked to and what I've seen personally is that our local clinics, at least here too, are 30 years behind the research. 30 years, 20 to 30 years behind. And so there was a podcast I was listening to the other day, and they were saying something like, if a doctor who's really proactive and studies 2 hours a day to keep up on the journals of the latest research, they'd still be 32 years behind the 8 ball, because none of us can keep ahead of what's coming out now. And then you add an AI and what that's coming to us now. It's just like the rate of research is going to just speed up, where with computer modeling and the ability, and I don't understand the whole science, you'd understand it better, that they can test thousands of compounds at once, whereas it used to be one after the other. So we're going to get huge amounts of information very, very soon. And it's up to us to be there waiting for it and at the cutting edge. And if you're dying, you have to test. You have to be the guinea pig almost. Like if you've got running out of options, then you better know what the latest stuff is, because there might be something in there that can help you.
Yeah. Well, even in the last few years of when I was working in the hospital, like some of the high throughput instruments that were worth, between $500,000 and $1 million each for each instrument. They could tag 100,000 proteins, in one run, which would take 2 hours. The data would be able to pick up all of those because they're fluorescently and radioactively tagged, each protein, and then the sensor is able to individually read all of those, and then goes through this biostatistician software which divides all the data. It just, even then, like, that was before Chat GPT and all that kind of stuff, and even then it was like the amount of data that comes out of this. We almost need another piece of software to do the crunching of the numbers, because human brains don't work fast enough to make utility of that much information.
Yeah. And that's what the world is actually drowning in data now, not a lack of data. It's how do we process it, and that's what the super brains are working on, and they're doing very well at it. And we're starting to get breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough. And then you've got the whole, drug discovery, FDA, all of that sort of lumbering giant corruption-filled processes that are out there, and then just the lumbering size of these institutions mean that it's like a cruise ship. You're trying to move a cruise ship. It just takes so long, and the standard thing on every research paper that you read is further research is required. Well, when is it enough? When is it enough? For something like hyperbaric, it's got a ton of research, and yet at every end of every bloody article is further research is required. And it's because there's no money in it, it's hard to get the research done. And so when do we say enough is enough and it's working?
Totally. Well, it's the same challenge with the food as medicine, nutrition angle of disease care, which is very limited if you've ever been in or worked in a hospital. I used to annoy the hell out of the dietitians on the ward, because I would be like, "What are you feeding these people?" And you can't patent natural molecules, at least with the current laws, and so it's not worth a dime, unfortunately, to do that kind of research. So
put Ensure and that sort of crap in their bodies.
Oh,
it's like, really?
So bad. Yeah,
brain injured people, strokes and aneurysms, and you're putting a glucose corn syrup based product in their brains.
Sugar and vegetable oil cocktail of death, basically.
Yeah. Like, how are you meant to get well in there? I mean, let alone the whole things like light and being interrupted constantly, and the noise and the thing. How you put a healthy person in the hospital and they'll be sick in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Let alone a sick person in the hospital, and how the hell, and they're just ignoring some of the basic good things, like let's exchange some of these fluorescent light bulbs, or turn off the lights and the LEDs, and give people the chance to actually rest. And there are times when you've got to test and you've got to come in and check and all of that. But, there should be some discussions on how do we make this more circadian rhythm balance within the hospital.
I totally agree.
The nutrition is, it's made for slop, basically. It's made for mass things. I never let my mum eat a single meal in the hospital. I made it all and brought it in.
Yeah, that's a very good move.
Because, and then, behind your back, things would still be brought to her that were, said gluten-free, dairy-free, keto, whatever on the list, and they'd still bring a toast and cereal for breakfast. Gluten intolerant, brilliant.
Lisa, you are an incredible human, and I know that we've got to both bounce in a very short little while. So where can everybody find you online and get more of your stuff?
Oh, thanks, Matty. Yeah, I'd love everybody to check out the podcast. Matty was on there and he's coming back again. Pushing the Limits, it's called. So find that. Also, my website is lisatamati.com. That's TAMATI for Tamati, lisatamati.com. And on all social medias, I have a really good YouTube channel going now. We've got over 560 videos and we're adding to it every week, producing content on there. We're also on, Instagram and Facebook and all of those sort of good places. Love people to reach out if any of the topics that I've talked about today sort of land with you and you just want to reach out. support@lisatamati.com will reach me and my team. And, if we can help you in some way, we'd love to. That'd be fantastic. So thanks for that, Matty.
No worries. I'll put all the links in the show notes below, so scroll down, grab those. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it, tag your friends and family and anybody that needs to hear it. And before we wrap up, Lisa, what is one piece of health information of all of the knowledge that you've got that you wish more people were aware of?
Before we do that, Matty, I just want to say, everybody, this guy is amazing, and you have to share his stuff, and you have to listen to what Matty does, and make sure that you send your love to Matty. Send it out there, because doing podcasts and doing all of this stuff is a labor of love. So guys, make sure you pay it back by reaching out to Matty, working with Matty, Lisa, if you can, and giving him at least a rating and review. Okay,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
One piece of advice, that's hard. I think going for sleep optimization has got to be the number one thing. It's the biggest leverage point that we have. If I gave you the right diet and the right exercise, but you're not sleeping, it's a waste of time. You've got to get your rest right, your recovery right. That's protective for your brain. It's healing for your body. So how do you do that? Well, you have your sleep routines. You pay attention to your circadian rhythms. You sort of acknowledge your ancient DNA. So go look at all the stuff on sleep optimization and making sure that you're getting the best you possibly can. I think that would be number one. And if I can just mention another thing, hormones. Yeah. Hormones are another huge player. If I've got someone their hormones are up the whoopsies, then the diet and the exercise and everything else isn't going to work. Yeah. You've got to fix the hormones first, So hormones and sleep, that'd be my two favorites.
Good suggestions. Good suggestions. Well, thanks so much for jumping on the show. And we'll definitely get you back, and we'll catch up again soon.
Love it. Thanks, Matty.
See you, Lisa.